Welcome to the Ronni Resonance Podcast, a space for women in transition, becoming, and rebirth. I'm Ronni, an intuitive guide, mentor, and multi-dimensional human learning right alongside you. Here we explore identity shifts, intuition, alignment, purpose, and the deeper truths you've been feeling but maybe haven't said out loud yet. This is where you return to yourself gently, honestly, and with resonance. Take a breath. You're exactly where you're meant to be.
I don't think that the problem is that people don't know their purpose. I think the problem is that we've been taught it's supposed to be one thing, like one job, one path, one identity. And when that starts to change, people think something is wrong. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Ronni Resonance Podcast. Today, I want to talk about how I've been noticing that purpose is actually far more than just one thing. Purpose evolves. So if you've been feeling just disconnected, maybe from your job, you're questioning the path that you're on, things they don't feel the same. And trust me, right now in the world, you are not alone. We all feel lost right now. But I just want to normalize that whether the world is on fire or not, there is nothing wrong. It's normal to be confused about your situation, and confusion can happen over and over again, depending on how your life changes and how things pivot. And I think the most emphasis I want to put on this is that, yes, nothing went wrong. We change, things, our circumstances change, our personalities change, our needs and our wants change. It all is allowed to change. So if you've been feeling like something in your life just doesn't fit anymore, but you can't explain why, this is probably why. I think the most important thing to talk about with this conversation is that, again, I want to reiterate that purpose does not necessarily equal one particular thing. And also, the problem that you're experiencing is more of your belief or from your belief system, and not necessarily you as the person are the problem. And I think that's a really big distinction to make, because this is something I think a lot of people get wrong a lot of the time. Your purpose, like I said, evolves. And when you end up having something that feels like, okay, this doesn't line up with me anymore, this doesn't fit me anymore, this isn't fulfilling anymore, whatever it might be, a lot of people will take it personally and think it's their fault. And I think a lot of this stems from probably hustle culture of, even in my own industry, I'll say, there will be people online who will ask for help for different things in the beauty industry. And there's always those people. And what's always funny about it is that they always comment anonymously back. But they will comment and be like, well, have you looked at this? Are you doing this? What about this? And literally the person is venting, or they're simply just trying to ask for advice on their situation because they're burnt out, they're frustrated with their team or employees or whatever it is. Maybe they're frustrated with clients. It doesn't mean that it's always a you problem when something is not feeling right in your life. Another example is like beauty professionals wanting clients to come in the door, and yet they are beating themselves up thinking it's my fault. I'm not doing enough. I'm not marketing myself enough. Just all the things. Everything goes through your head. But the real thing is that right now, and I'm just using this as an example, this is not what this conversation is about, but a lot of people think that if the client's not coming in the door, like I said, it's a them thing. However, in the economy that we're in right now, it's just the simple fact that clients are spending money differently. So, of course, you can be working your ass off trying to get clients in the door, and you can't necessarily control that. Like, if they don't have the money to spend on your services or what you do, that is just the reality of the situation. It's nothing that you're doing wrong. if your prices are higher because you're in demand, you have experience, you have all these things, that doesn't mean you lower your price in order to get the client in the door or run a discount. Okay? It has nothing to do with you a lot of the time when something is feeling off. And that doesn't have to just be your job or your business or whatever. It can be friendships, it can be your relationship, it can be so many different things in your life. So the main thing I want to say here is that I just don't think that people are actually lost a lot of the time in their life, depending on what avenue we're talking about. I really think that they're outgrowing a version of their life. So a lot of us think that purpose equals like what we do in our job. Like we spend the most time in our job, we get paid to do our job. And so it makes a lot of sense to put a lot of our time and energy into our job. And then all of a sudden we get this complex or think that, well, this is my purpose. This is what I spend the most of my time doing. So this must be my purpose here on earth to do X, Y, and Z. And some people think that their purpose is whatever passions that they have. So, I mean, it could be art. It could be, I mean, gosh, there's so many different passions people have, art being a major one. But they also think that whatever that passion is has to last forever. So I think a lot of the time when you have your job, and let's say we're just going to use a job as an example, but you have your job and you believe your job is your purpose. So I'll use my situation as an example. For a really long time, I thought my purpose was helping people as an esthetician. Like I really thought, okay, that is what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. And I felt that within that job, I had to have obviously a ton of passion, because if I didn't have the passion for what I did, then it may not be my purpose and I may not actually love what I do. And then I may be just faking it. So we put so much emphasis a lot of the time on our job and the passion behind that job and what purpose we're trying to have from that job in our life or whatever. So that's one thing. But I also think that for me, I was like, I need to be an esthetician forever. This is my life forever. This is how I help people. I physically take care of people. I help them relax. I help them feel more confident. I help them in holistic ways. So when you start to question something around that job or that situation, it is a little scary because you think like, okay, is this me in this moment questioning that this may not be a right fit for me anymore, or questioning when you question your job that you've attached to your purpose or you think is your purpose, that's even harder to part with that job because you've put so much emphasis on it, especially if you've made it your passion, especially if you felt like it just, it was your purpose. And so we all think it has to last forever. So I do think that a lot of the time, the reason this is happening is that our society puts a lot of pressure on career identity. And not only do they put pressure on it, I mean, you're on Instagram, especially if you're in the beauty industry. And again, I'm not trying to talk just about the beauty industry. This video is for everyone. But when you have a job that you have to promote constantly, so like I constantly have to share, I've had to share my results with my clients. I've had to share various things. I then look like via my Instagram that is my entire identity, is being an esthetician. And so you'll have estheticians who will have like, okay, this account is just for aesthetics, and then I have my personal account, and then for me, I end up adding like my spa account, and then this account, and feeling like I had to keep everything so separate and separate who I was from being an esthetician, but really everybody was only seeing me as an esthetician. So that made me start to realize that I needed to not just talk about aesthetics all the time and talk about the real things that I want to talk about, because truly I was reaching a point in my career that I was like, I'm so tired of talking about aesthetics, the beauty industry, for various reasons. And this is not to shame anybody in the beauty industry. I just realized I was evolving from that. And so that was really hard to be like, oh, I'm changing this now. And that means online, I'm going to show up differently. And how are people going to receive that? So there is a lot of fear and pressure to look a certain way, be a certain way online, and to also be like, I know like the whole like girl boss stuff was really big for a long time. It still kind of is there. It's a little toxic, to be honest, but the girl boss stuff is about making, like, it's supposed to be empowerment, but it's also about making yourself look like a particular identity, to look strong and to be this, that, and the other. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do that, right? Like, you could just show up without being like, yeah, I'm a boss bitch, and like still get the same response from people. And maybe people like you more because you're coming from more of an authentic place than just being like, yeah, I'm a bad bitch, you know? So I also think that people have the pressure to choose early in their life. So when you are like going through high school, by like your sophomore year, they're like, have you thought about what you're going to college for? What's your career going to be? And so you have this like insane pressure to figure out your entire career because it's expensive to go to college if you end up going, and you better have it figured out, because if you're not just taking your prereqs in the first year or so and then you completely change your major, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time with that, and it's going to cost you more money. It might make you stay in school longer. There's so many things that people are thinking about. Then you have the people like me who were like, I am not going to a 2-year college or even a 4-year college or longer. I was so over high school by the end of it, and there's just no way that I was wanting to go to college, like an actual college. So that's how I got into aesthetics, was going more for like a trade type job. And I struggled a lot in school, and I think another part of me felt like, okay, I can work a physical job. I can do this. It's not going to require a ton of my brain. I mean, I'm going to have to know skin, and I'm going to have to know these things. And a lot of that was wrapped in my own insecurities of trauma and things that I went through, and feeling less of myself, maybe based off of what teachers had said in school or evaluations I've had or whatever it was. And so, you know, when I felt pressured to figure out what I was going to do after, then by my junior year, I was like, oh, I'm set. I'm going to be an esthetician, you know, and I felt like that made sense to me. It was not crazy expensive. It was going to be 6 months full time. It would allow me to just get out and start working, which felt more natural to me rather than, you know, obviously just going to school for 4 years and trying to work and do all that stuff. Like, to me, I was ready to just start working. So the pressure that caused, it made me at 18 think, oh, I've got my whole life figured out. I'm good to go. And so, you know, I held on to that identity as an esthetician because also all my friends were in college. Like, I was just home working. And so I really held on to being an esthetician, and it became my whole identity for literally the last 15 years. And that's all people knew about me. And the second I stepped out of that mold or framework or whatever, people are like, is Ronni okay? What's going on with her? Like, all the things. So I also think that we think that when we start this job and our or whatever career it is or whatever, especially if you had the pressure to choose early and you chose early and you have been so stuck in that career identity, I think that there's an illusion of permanence. Like, okay, I'm going to be an esthetician forever. Like I said, like I figured it out, you know, and I knew other people at my age at that time were really struggling with the fact that they didn't know what they wanted to do. So I felt confident. I was like, I know what I'm doing, whatever. But that caused me to think like, oh, I'm going to be an esthetician forever. And I was perfectly good with that. And the only other option, because I was like, okay, where can I grow and expand in this field? And I started to realize that it's a lot harder to grow and expand in the beauty industry than I had anticipated. And just more people got out into the industry. The dynamics changed between like solo estheticians and spas and all these things. So as things started to change, it started to ruffle my feathers, and I started to kind of realize that maybe this isn't going to be a forever thing. And what does that mean for me? What else am I going to do? You do one thing for so long, and you don't have a college degree. So you're like, oh my God, like I don't even have anything else to show for it. It's literally just my aesthetics license and the experience I've had over the last 15 years. And a lot of companies, especially corporate, are like, I'm not going to hire you if you don't have this. So it is a very scary place to be if you are someone in my particular position, navigating that. But a lot of us have various things in our lives that make us question things and kind of shake up what we've believed our whole lives. So I think that we've really been taught to tie our purpose to our career. And that's where a lot of this confusion starts for people. I started my career at 18. That became my identity. And like I said, I was asking, who am I without this? And I think this was around 2024. I started questioning this, and I've talked about this where I started to part with employees and started to experiment with just being solo again and restructuring how I wanted to help other estheticians and all of these things. And so I think in 2024, when I first parted with my employees, that's when I really started to kind of be like, oh, I kind of like this alone, but I don't know if I have the sustainability to physically work all the hours, all the days for the rest of my life as a spa owner. Estheticians are struggling right now. They're not at a place that they really feel comfortable spending money on education or mentorship, even though that probably is what they need. And so I kind of was thinking like, I had to get to a point that I was like, okay, but who am I outside of this identity? And so I started to look into that and do a lot more self-discovery and think about what it was that I really wanted, because truly in 2024, I had turned 30 years old. And I also think that was a whole other thing, I guess, because that also, I'm a whole different person now at 32 than I was at 18 years old when I started all of this. And granted, I was really actually 16, 17 when I officially decided that I was going to school for aesthetics. So it's been a really long time, but I've just realized that people didn't really, like I said, know me outside of being an esthetician. And I didn't really know myself either. And that's what prompted a lot of that self-discovery and kind of diving more into different self-discovery tools and connecting with myself more, which really started to like change a lot for me. And the next thing that started happening was kind of this shift. And it started happening kind of in 2024, a lot in 2025. Definitely 2025 was a rough year, and you guys all know I'm not the only one out here in the world that was struggling in 2025. But my spas really started slowing down. Like I mentioned earlier, clients spending money differently. As much as I believe that my services are so beneficial holistically and offer so much for people, and that skincare is healthcare, people are spending their money differently. They look at my services like a luxury. They have to put gas in their car to take their kids to school. Gas prices are raising. They need to pay for groceries, and prices of everything had just completely skyrocketed really ever since COVID, but in the last couple of years. And so those realizations I was having was like, what is my business going to look like in 6 months? What am I going to do? How do I pivot? I had tried so many times. I'm like, what about this service? And then this service. And I'm just throwing shit at the wall because I'm like, I have to make this work. I've spent the last 15 years doing this. I have to make this work. And I'll get to this stuff in a little bit, but there are different phases that I've been in that my purpose has changed. So I'll get to that later. But I also started questioning my industry more. There's always been this little thing in me, though, since I started, that grew as the industry grew and changed, about how I felt about it. You know, what did I align with? What was I not aligned with? And I just kept finding more things that I just did not feel aligned with. And there's a lot of red tape. There's just a lot of pressure of perfectionism, not just from, you know, the way you look and the way you present yourself and being online and all of those things, but pressure to be, you know, right for my clients and just to say all the right things and handle situations correctly and make sure you have structure and strategy to your business and all of those things. And, you know, that those things just started to kind of get out of hand. And I was starting to feel like our industry was taking away from the human experience and more about sales, and just this like hustle culture and lying to the consumer, like gimmicky things and trends, all of those things. I don't get down with that. I just don't. I've tried. I definitely have, because I felt like I had to keep up, but I just don't get down with that. So that completely changed for me over the last few years on how I was viewing things. I also felt like there was a lot of the time deeper conversations were coming up with clients. And as I started doing my solistic chakra facial, which I do tarot and a chakra cleanse, and you know, we do a little bit of like a mini alignment reading in the beginning of that facial, and the clarity I was getting and the clarity my clients were getting during those sessions, it just really made me realize that like a lot of stuff in the beauty industry feels surface level to me. And I want to have deeper conversations, but intentionally, not like, oh, you're in for a facial and this comes up and we have this conversation. I wanted to take it a step further with people, and I just didn't know how. And so what I was realizing was that all in all, after all of this, the stuff that I've mentioned, was that what I actually loved wasn't just the service or being a service provider. It was just really, truly helping people understand themselves on a deeper level. I think the biggest message that I want to get across in this episode today is that your purpose is layered. I think the core of your purpose stays, but I think the expression of that purpose, it does change over time. Like the core of your purpose might stay the same, but the way that you live it out changes as you do. I think some people feel stuck in a particular like purpose or perceived purpose, maybe because of like the time that they've invested. So I talked about that with like being an esthetician for 15 years. Maybe they feel like this identity attachment. So like me feeling attached to the identity of an esthetician, and who am I without that identity? And again, like people might feel the fear of judgment from peers in their industry, which I definitely feel a lot in the beauty industry. And the other thing too is I think the one of the biggest things is just not letting people down. When you're in my position, you know, you're afraid to, you know, let your clients down and let just various people down that have supported you over the years. But like, you know, my parents helped pay for my schooling. They supported me through seasons that weren't so great. There's just so many reasons why you would be afraid to let people down should the purpose that you've been so attached to change. And it's not that you just don't know your purpose. It's that you've, you know, attached to the version of you that lived it before. Also, there are different seasons of purpose. And most people, I don't think they realize they've moved into one, like a new one when it happens. And for me, I almost didn't even realize, to be honest with you. There were a long time that, you know, you might have been in survival in this one purpose, and then maybe you have a growth phase. You learn a major lesson that wakes you up to something, and then you think, oh, okay, maybe I need to work on this or grow myself or whatever. And then there's kind of this like soul phase where you really truly find the thing that really resonates with you and you want to change and align your life to that. So again, like it might look different in the way that it's projected into the world and in society, and how you use your energy to act on that purpose. But it does change as we grow and evolve as humans. Like, I went from being, the esthetician who was like survival mode, like I'm just going to work, try to take all the classes, try to make that money, all the things, and then get knocked off my horse while I'm in a business partnership and have to really kind of get into this like mode of, oh, I got to go to therapy. I got to figure my shit out. I got to think like, what went wrong in this situation? What is this mirroring back to me that I need to work on? And so then that kind of changes your purpose a little bit. And then, like I said, it changes into that soul purpose where you've done all the work and you're like, okay, I know it resonates. And so then you start aligning your life to that. And so your new purpose becomes what your soul really, really, really feels inside that maybe I didn't know at the age of 18 because I didn't know myself at all. So I also think the biggest thing to say with all this stuff is that you're not behind. You didn't mess up anything. You are evolving through your life. And honestly, if your purpose hasn't evolved or things in your life haven't evolved, then maybe there are some things that you have to look at, like, okay, am I staying too comfortable somewhere? Or, am I not just making decisions for my life? Am I letting my life kind of run the show because I think I'm in my purpose, but we're not really quite there yet? I think if people think that if something changes inside of them one day that they just messed something up. They made the wrong choice in the beginning and they spent all this time and no, they really need to be doing this over here. But again, would you have known that had you not spent so much time in one thing thinking, okay, this is my purpose? Like my purpose today, or well, actually when I was 18 was again, like being a service provider, helping my clients with their skin, physical labor, things like that. Now, fast forward 15 years later, I'm realizing on a soul level that my purpose really is about taking everything I've experienced and learned, understanding it, learning from it, and then teaching and guiding others. And so everything that you've done in that one thing you did for so long, truly, again, like I said, I'll say it a billion times, it's not going to get you, it's what's going to get you to the actual purpose in your life. And that you may not have been able to experience that or discover that had you not spent so much time doing something else. So I think feeling lost is often the moment that your life really is trying to realign itself. If you want help actually applying this to your life, that's something that I support people with in my alignment readings. And I also go deeper into this inside the Becoming Sanctuary, especially around understanding what season of purpose you're in and how to move forward from it. I want to reiterate that purpose isn't one thing that you figure out one time. It is something that evolves as you do. And sometimes the moment that you feel lost is actually the moment you're starting to realign with who you're becoming. I just want to say thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to catch that extended podcast, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the description. And I'll also put a link to book an alignment reading should you decide to do that. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in next week's episode.